Hi, I'm Isabella Jibilian, former roommate of Katie and currently a journalist at Business Insider.
And I wanted to talk to you today just about your journey, how you became a journalist, what it's like to be a writer, especially a journalist writer during like the pandemic. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is definitely crazy. Yeah, people were already complaining about a 24-hour news cycle before the pandemic. Now it's just like Trump world plus COVID world means that there's no shortage of news ever. But I guess how I got started, I did a research project in London for a summer. I was interviewing Afghanistan veterans. And at first I kind of envisioned it as a exploration, like a kind of more literary thing, like where I was like trying to learn about these perspectives that are very different from my own. And then I just found out that I love talking to new people, interviewing people, being really nosy and getting kind of permission to be nosy. And so that kind of like started me on this journey towards thinking, oh, I would love to like learn about people's perspectives that are different from my own and do that for a living.
So you're perfect for this project that I'm doing, literally, because you do it for a living.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad to hear that I'm perfect.
So after doing that one summer, because I know you are interested in so many different topics and you have a background in just every subject I can imagine. So what was like the decision where you were like, I want to go to grad school for this. I want to learn more of this. Like, this is my thing.
Yeah, I tried out a journalism class at Stanford. I wasn't part of the Stanford Daily or anything, but I tried out a journalism class at Stanford, and I had this rock star professor who was a foreign correspondent in the Middle East, and she's like, you know, she's very old school and like a really hard-hitting reporter. And I was thrust into like local reporting. I tried to like get off campus as much as I could. So I was covering like Menlo Park city council meetings, and I like loved all the kind of like local characters you'd see. There's this, you know, there is Tutu Thompson. Actually, she's not in Menlo Park. She was in a different Bay Area city, but like Tutu Thompson was one of those ladies that like always has the microphone, always is like going to submit a comment during the meeting. Or, you know, you have, you talk to like, especially the housing crisis is going on. And I remember there was one city council member who said, you know, I asked her, you know, how do you envision your community? And she said, an oasis, right? And to me, that's very interesting because we're in a time when people are struggling to live in the Bay Area. And the idea that you want to preserve the kind of rural agrarian nature of your city is very much at odds to these like kind of political movements that are saying the opposite.
Right.
So for me, it was great just like kind of meeting all these local actors. And by virtue of reporting in such like a local context, I was able to like really meet the decision makers and kind of like learn why people were so fired up about like zoning laws.
Because especially when you're like younger, especially when you're a college student, just like fresh out of high school, you just don't know how the world works. And so getting a glimpse into kind of both politics, but also just like kind of just like social interactions of adults I mean, that's all that news really is if you take a really broad view of it.
Absolutely, I agree. Like, I think there's this, I love narrative journalism. I have a lot of respect for people that, you know, write beautiful long form pieces. And I was like a magazine reader growing up. Like, I love New York Magazine. I love New Yorker. I just love even like BuzzFeed has long reads. I love those. And to me, there's this whole psychological aspect to all of this decision making. There are so many interesting folks you get to know, and there's a lot of weirdos out there, and it's so fun to be able to kind of like pry into people's beliefs. And like the other day, I interviewed a guy who was he was an auctioneer, and he was selling a Bible that was signed by Trump. And he was a really kind of colorful guy on the phone. And, you know, I asked him, well, like, how do you feel about this? And he was very proud because he had he has some
Right.
contact with the White House. he bought the Bible. He basically tries to think of stuff that's going to be controversial if Trump signs it. And so he thought of this thing that would be controversial because obviously Trump had that, Bible photo op that's, made a lot of headlines. So he had a contact in the White House, bring in a Bible, get it signed by Trump, because Trump signed so many things for people in a day, and bring it back. And now he's selling it online. So I interviewed the guy, and he's like, Trump is despicable. I mean, I think he called Trump like a lizard at one point in the interview. But the thing is to me, it's like, it's not just about the fact that like someone might spend $20,000 on a Bible that's signed by Trump. It's that there's this guy behind the scenes that's thinking about what is the most controversial thing? How can I get into the White House? And to him, it doesn't even matter that, whatever his opinions on Trump are, because he's out here to make a buck, and he has his own like kind of weird way of doing it.
So how do you, when you're writing articles, how do you write objectively about, because I feel like everything is so politicized right now, and it's got to be really hard to be in your position to be like careful and also be like representing, this like large entity, this large company. Like, do you find any kind of like pressure in that?
I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely, there's always a balance to be struck. I think like as an organization, I write articles that fact check what Trump says. And at that point, you just have to talk to, independent experts. I also have to say, like, to me, I think it's important to cover important news regardless of whatever political leaning it serves. So for example, the other day I wrote a story, it was about the largest police union in the nation endorsing Trump, right? And regardless of my own political leanings, that's an important story, right? That a giant union, especially police, very politicized at the moment, kind of have this opinion.
Right.
And it was interesting to me because we can see the traffic in all our articles. And so that ultimately is a story that got circulated on like Blue Lives Matter, Facebook groups, that sort of, an article like that is kind of, it can be used to a certain political end. But to me, I kind of, you have to say to yourself, well, is this important or not? And is this a meaningful thing? And you write it anyway.
And so for stuff like that, it makes sense, like the kind of political interpretation comes afterwards, right? You are dealing with like the facts in certain situations, and you're like, this is a thing that is happening in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like BI also has opinion sections, it has analysis sections. And so, and in fact, we actually like redid our labels recently so that it's even more obvious the difference between them, which I think is a great move. I think it's important. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to really be careful there. And I'm lucky I have a good relationship with my editors. So we have active conversations about what is the fairest language to use and how to avoid bias. And I think that sort of relationship is what keeps you in check.
Right. And I think that's also super important, that there is kind of this like, that kind of meta conversation about truth, because especially right now, like every conception of media is really like tense right now. Anytime the word media or the news is used, it's usually not entirely positive anymore. And it's good that like you, someone who's like behind the veil, is thinking about these things and figuring out how to be like objective and kind and truthful and honest. And I think that's really admirable.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, it's definitely interesting being in a profession that has been demonized to some degree. I think I read a like survey a while ago that said like people dislike journalists and lawyers like more than any other profession. But I don't know. I think I do my best, and I'm ultimately really proud because I'm surrounded by colleagues that do important work. And I was on an investigative team at Reuters, and I see like how people take the truth, and now I feel like I have even more respect for the profession that I decided to join.
Well, I'm really proud of you, and I'm always excited to talk to you and hear what's going on. So thank you for being here and having this conversation. It's been amazing.
Oh, of course. Well, the 10 minutes passes quickly, like you said. I saw a milk over my eye. I was like, oh, damn.